Zeal Education Society, redefining excellence.
Hello all, my name is Chinmay Deshpande. I am from Department of Electrical Engineering, belongs to Zeal College of Engineering and Research, Narhe, Pune. In this video lecture, we are going to discuss about types of three-phase induction motor. In the previous video of a construction of an induction machine, we discussed that there are two parts. First one is the stator, which is stationary, to which we are going to give three-phase AC supply if we are talking about three-phase induction motor. And the second important part is nothing but a rotor which will be rotating. Now here that rotor core has a parallel slots in the outer periphery. If whatever slots which are present in the rotor core are not exactly parallel to the shaft of the core, then that particular rotor is called as a squirrel cage rotor. So here you will observe a diagram of a squirrel cage rotor. Here the slots which are present, these are not exactly parallel to the shaft. There will be a small angle, that angle is called as a skew angle. On the other hand, the second type of the rotor is nothing but the rotor which consists of slots which are exactly parallel to that of the shaft. So such type of the rotor is called as a phase wound or a slip ring rotor. So these are the two types of induction motor based on the construction of a rotor. Now let's discuss what is the difference in between these two types of the rotor. First one is nothing but a wound or the slip ring rotor. Second one is the squirrel cage rotor. Now, as we know that to the stator winding, it consists of three-phase windings and to which AC supply is given to it. So whatever a construction of a stator winding is there, if to the rotor, if we have a same construction with a presence of a winding, then we can say that it is a wound or a slip ring rotor. That winding may be either connected in a star or a delta, depending upon application. Whereas in case of a squirrel cage rotor, it consists of copper or aluminium bars, or the bars are made up of alloys also. These bars are short circuited at both the ends with the help of end ring. Second important point is that construction of a wound or the slip ring rotor is complicated because of presence of slip rings and the brushes. But in case of a squirrel cage rotor, the construction is simple as it doesn't have any brushes or a slip ring. In case of slip ring rotor, we can add resistance externally because of a presence of a slip ring. Whereas in case of squirrel cage rotor, there is no provision to add external resistor. Now, due to the possibility of addition of an external resistance in case of wound or the slip ring rotor, we can have a high starting torque. But in case of a squirrel cage rotor, moderate starting torque is there which cannot be controlled. Now in case of slip ring rotor, already we discussed that as far as construction is concerned, it has slip rings and the brushes. But in case of squirrel cage rotor, it has only bars and no slip ring and the brushes. Now, because of a presence of the brushes in case of a slip ring rotor, there is a frequent maintenance which is required for a wound rotor or a slip ring rotor. But in case of a squirrel cage rotor, has no brushes, no slip ring, therefore maintenance required is less. Whatever a presence of a slip ring or the brushes in case of slip ring rotor makes that particular rotor costly. But in case of a squirrel cage rotor, as the construction is simple, no presence of the brushes and the slip ring, so therefore the construction is cheap, or we can say that that particular is cheap compared to that of slip ring type of the rotor. Now, wound or the slip ring rotor is rarely used. Only 10% of the applications are there in the industry which are based on slip ring rotor. But because of no complication, as the structure is simple and it is robust in nature, so therefore we use a squirrel cage rotor in industry. So in a 90% of applications, squirrel cage rotor is used. In case of wound or the slip ring rotor, the rotor copper losses are high and hence less efficiency. Whereas in case of squirrel cage rotor, the copper losses associated with the rotor are less, and as the losses are less, but obviously we can say that it has a high efficiency. Now, in case of slip ring rotor, the speed control by the rotor is possible because of a resistance method, because here we can add external resistance with the help of slip ring. But in case of squirrel cage rotor, as no slip rings, So it is we cannot add any resistance externally to the squirrel cage rotor, and therefore the speed control by a rotor resistance method is not possible. Now what are the applications of the wound or a slip ring rotor and a squirrel cage rotor? Wound or the slip ring rotors are used where we require to have a high starting torque, that is in a hoist, crane or an elevator. Whereas squirrel cage rotor can be used in the lathes, drilling machines, fan, blowers, water pumps, grinder, printing machines, etc. So this is what is diagrammatic representation of a squirrel cage rotor. Here now you will observe that here it will be, these are the aluminium end rings, these are the slots in which aluminium bars or the conductors are placed, then this is a steel lamination and this is the shaft. Whereas in this particular, in a slip ring three-phase induction motor, here you will see that there are brushes which are present, this is the shaft and these are the slip rings which are present. So this is what is a diagrammatic representation of wound or the slip ring rotor and the squirrel cage rotor. So in this video lecture, we discuss what are the different types of a three-phase induction motor based on its rotor construction. Thank you.
Zeal Education Society, redefining excellence.